The fluorescent lights hummed in municipal courtroom 4C. Thursday afternoon, the air smelled of old wood and stale coffee. Judge Harrison Pierce sat behind his bench, working through the docket with the mechanical efficiency of a man who'd heard it all before. Traffic violations, zoning disputes, small claims. The daily grind of municipal court. Next case, he said, not looking up from his papers. Hayes versus City of Riverside, municipal code violation. The bailiff, a middle-aged man named Tom Rodriguez, stood. Samuel Hayes, Your Honor. An elderly man in a wheelchair rolled forward, guided by a young woman in a gray suit. Rachel Chen, according to the nameplate on her folder. Court-appointed attorney. Judge Pierce glanced up, then stopped. His eyes narrowed. Around the old man's neck hung a pale blue ribbon. A star-shaped medal rested against his civilian shirt. Pierce set down his pen. Counsel, approach. Rachel wheeled Samuel to the defense table, then walked to the bench. The prosecutor, a tired-looking woman named Linda Marsh, joined her. Pierce leaned forward. Voice low. Miss Chen, your client is wearing what appears to be military insignia. This court has standards of decorum. Please have him remove it before we proceed. Rachel hesitated. Your Honor, that's a Medal of F. I don't care what it is, Pierce interrupted. Courtroom policy is clear. No unnecessary adornments. No political statements. No attempts to garner sympathy. This is about an unmowed lawn, not military service. Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but Pierce waved her off. Tell your client to remove it. We'll take a 5-minute reset. When we reconvene, I expect compliance. He banged his gavel. Not loudly, just firmly. Rachel walked back to Samuel, knelt beside his wheelchair, spoke quietly. Samuel's weathered face remained calm, expressionless, but he didn't move to take off the medal. Mr. Hayes, Rachel whispered, he's not going to let this go. I know it's important to you. But if we don't comply, he could hold you in contempt. That means jail time. Samuel's pale gray eyes stayed fixed on the flag in the corner. This medal, he said quietly, doesn't come off. Rachel closed her eyes, took a breath, nodded slowly. 5 minutes passed. The courtroom remained in recess. People shuffled papers, checked phones, whispered to each other. Judge Pierce returned, saw the medal still in place. His jaw tightened. Mr. Hayes, he said, voice clipped, professional. I gave you a direct instruction. This isn't personal. It's policy. Military decorations, political pins, religious symbols, they all fall under the same rule. This is a courtroom, not a forum for display. Samuel said nothing. Pierce exhaled slowly. Miss Chen, advise your client that failure to comply constitutes contempt of court. I will give him one more opportunity. Remove the medal, or face sanctions. Rachel stood. Your Honor, with respect, this is the Medal of Honor. Federal law specifically. Federal law, Pierce interrupted, does not supersede my authority to maintain decorum in this courtroom. Mr. Hayes has made his choice. He lifted his gavel. The defendant is found in contempt. 48 hours county holding facility. Bailiff, take him into custody after we conclude this matter. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Samuel Hayes sat perfectly still, his hands resting on the armrests of his wheelchair, his face unchanged. But in the back row, a young man in a suit had stopped scrolling on his phone. His name was Michael Torres, and he had just recognized what that medal was. Michael Torres stared at the pale blue ribbon around the old man's neck. He'd seen that medal before, in photographs, in museums, in his grandfather's stories. His grandfather, Carlos Torres, had been a Marine, served 3 tours, came home with a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star, and a deep reverent respect for the men who wore that particular ribbon. There are fewer than 4,000 living recipients. His grandfather had told him once, and every single one of them earned it in ways most people can't even imagine. Michael looked at the judge, at the bailiff moving slowly toward the wheelchair, at the attorney standing helplessly beside her client. This was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. He quietly slipped out of the courtroom into the hallway. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts. He didn't call his supervisor at the DA's office. He didn't call the court administrator. He called the one person who would understand, Colonel David Williams, his grandfather's old executive officer, now stationed at Fort Daniels, 20 minutes away. The phone rang twice. Colonel Williams. Sir, it's Michael Torres, Carlos's grandson. Michael, The voice warmed. Good to hear from you. Everything all right? No, I'm at the municipal courthouse. Courtroom 4C. There's a situation. He explained quickly. The judge. The contempt charge. The medal. The veteran's name is Samuel Hayes. Silence. Then say that again. Samuel Hayes, sir. A long pause. Michael heard movement. A chair. Papers. Michael. Are you absolutely certain? Yes, sir. Pale blue ribbon. Star-shaped medal. Medal of Honor. Jesus Christ. Williams's voice had changed. Harder. Urgent. What's the judge's name? Pierce. Harrison Pierce. Does Hayes have legal representation? Court appointed. She tried to intervene, but the judge shut her down. All right. Listen to me carefully. Do not leave that courthouse. Find out where they're taking Hayes. I need to make some calls. This is gonna move fast. Stay with him if you can. Yes, sir. And Michael, thank you for calling. Your grandfather would be proud. The line went dead. Michael stood in the empty hallway, his heart pounding. He walked back into the courtroom, took his seat. Judge Pierce was wrapping up the proceedings. Mr. Hayes, you will be remanded to county custody for 48 hours. Bailiff Rodriguez will process you after we adjourn. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. People began gathering their belongings. The courtroom slowly emptied. Rachel Chen knelt beside Samuel's wheelchair again, speaking quietly, apologizing, promising to file an appeal. Samuel just nodded, calm, resigned. The bailiff approached. Rodriguez. He looked uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes, he said gently, I need to process you. We'll do it as quickly as possible, make you as comfortable as we can. Samuel looked up at him. I understand. You're just doing your job. Rodriguez nodded, grateful for the grace. Michael Torres watched from the back row, waiting. 15 minutes later his phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Williams. Stay close. General Blackwood is personally responding. ETA 25 minutes. Michael's eyes widened. A 3-star general coming here. For Samuel Hayes, this was about to become something much bigger than a municipal court case. At Fort Daniels Army Base, Colonel Williams stood in the doorway of Major General Richard Blackwood's office. The general was reviewing reports. A career spanning 35 years, 3 combat deployments, a reputation for fairness and fierce loyalty to his soldiers. Williams knocked on the open door. Sir, I apologize for the interruption. We have a situation. Off base. Urgent. Blackwood looked up, read the tension in Williams's face. Come in. Closed the door. Williams entered, stood at attention. Sir, I just received a call from a reliable source. A veteran is being held in contempt at the municipal courthouse downtown. The judge ordered him to remove his Medal of Honor. He refused. The judge is detaining him for 48 hours. Blackwood's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. The veteran's name? Samuel Hayes, sir. Blackwood's pen stopped moving. He set it down carefully, looked at Williams. Sergeant Major Samuel Hayes, Korea, 68 years ago. Yes, sir. Blackwood stood, slowly, deliberately. Get my dress uniform, full Class A. I want Colonel Patterson and Major Kim with me, full dress as well. We leave in 15 minutes. Yes, sir. Should I notify the courthouse? Yes. Call the court administrator. Inform them that I am personally responding to a matter involving one of our Medal of Honor recipients. Request permission to enter the courtroom. Make it clear this is not a threat. It's a courtesy call, but make sure they understand I'm coming either way. Williams hesitated. Sir. The judge. The judge. Blackwood interrupted. Made a mistake. We're going to give him the opportunity to correct it. Respectfully. But if he doesn't, then we'll address it through proper channels. With the state judicial board, the media, the governor's office if necessary. He pulled his jacket from the hanger, started changing into his dress uniform. Samuel Hayes held a position for 4 days, alone, wounded, in sub-zero temperatures, against impossible odds. He saved 7 men. He called artillery on his own position to stop an enemy advance. Blackwood's voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. He earned that medal by doing things most of us can't even comprehend. And now some municipal judge with a god complex is treating him like a prop. He fastened his belt, adjusted his collar. No, that ends today. 15 minutes later, 3 men in Army Class A uniforms walked out of the headquarters building. General Blackwood, Colonel Patterson, Major Kim, 2 vehicles, military police escort. Not a show of force, a show of respect. They drove in silent. Blackwood in the back seat of the lead vehicle, looking out the window, thinking about a young sergeant in Korea, holding a position, refusing to leave his men, thinking about what that young sergeant had become, an old man in a wheelchair, being humiliated over an unmowed lawn. Sir, the driver said quietly, We're 5 minutes out. Blackwood nodded. Call ahead. Confirm they're expecting us. I don't want this to be a circus. I want it to be professional, clear, and unmistakable. Yes, sir. The vehicles continued through the city street, headed for the courthouse, and a reckoning. In the courthouse basement, bailiff Tom Rodriguez was processing Samuel Hayes. It was a small holding area. 4 cells, usually empty this time of day. Rodriguez filled out paperwork, avoiding eye contact, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes, I need to take your personal effects. You'll get everything back when you're released. Wallet, keys, watch, the metal stays with you. I'm not touching that. Samuel nodded. Handed over his wallet. A few coins, a key ring. Rodriguez bagged them, labeled the bag. I have to ask, are you feeling okay? Any medical issues I should know about? You'll have access to medical staff if you need it. I'm fine, Samuel said quietly. Rodriguez nodded. Okay, you'll be in a holding cell until transfer. County facility is sending transport. Should be here in an hour or so. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. For what it's worth, sir, I don't think this is right. What the judge did. I have to follow orders. Samuel looked at him. I know. You're a good man. You're just doing your job. Rodriguez's throat tightened. He nodded. Upstairs in the courthouse lobby, Michael Torres was waiting. He'd called Rachel Chen, Samuel's attorney, told her what was happening. She was making calls of her own, to legal aid organizations, veteran advocacy groups. Michael's phone buzzed again. Colonel Williams. Torres, where is Hayes right now? Basement holding area. They're processing him. Transfer to county in about an hour. Good. General Blackwood will be there in 10 minutes. He's contacted the court administrator. They're expecting him. He'll meet with the judge privately first. Attempt to resolve this without making it a public spectacle. And if the judge refuses, then it becomes public. But the general wants to give him a chance to do the right thing first. Michael understood. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about correction. I'll be here soon. Good man. 10 minutes later, 2 black sedans pulled up to the courthouse. Not speeding, not dramatic, just arriving. 3 men in army dress uniforms stepped out. General Blackwood, Colonel Patterson, Major Kim. They walked through the front entrance. Approached the security desk. Major General Richard Blackwood, United States Army. I have an appointment with Judge Harrison Pierce. The court administrator has been notified. The security guard checked his list. Nodded. Made a phone call. A moment later, a nervous-looking clerk appeared. General Blackwood, if you'll follow me, please. Judge Pierce is expecting you. Blackwood nodded. Followed the clerk. They walked through the halls, past courtrooms, past administrative offices, stopped outside a door marked Judge Harrison Pierce Chambers. The clerk knocked, opened the door. Judge Pierce. General Blackwood is here. Pierce looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face. He stood, tried to recover his composure. General, this is unexpected. I wasn't aware the military would be involving itself in a municipal court matter. Blackwood entered, closed the door behind him. The 2 men stood facing each other. Your Honor, Blackwood said, voice calm, professional. I'm here about Sergeant Major Samuel Hayes. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to discuss it with you, respectfully, before this situation escalates further. Pierce's jaw tightened. With all due respect, General, this is a legal matter, not a military one. With all due respect, Your Honor, Blackwood replied. It's both. Judge Pierce gestured to a chair. Please, sit. General Blackwood remained standing. I'll keep this brief, Your Honor. Pierce sat behind his desk, attempting to reclaim some sense of control. General, I understand you're concerned about one of your veterans, but Mr. Hayes was in my courtroom. He refused a direct order to comply with courtroom policy. That's contempt. Cut and dry. Blackwood nodded slowly. I understand your position, but I need you to understand mine. Samuel Hayes isn't just one of my veterans. He's a Medal of Honor recipient. I'm aware, Pierce said. His attorney mentioned it, but that doesn't grant him special treatment in my courtroom. I have policy. I enforce them equally. Your Honor, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for appropriate recognition. The Medal of Honor isn't jewelry. It isn't a political statement. It's a congressional award, the highest our nation can bestow. Pierce leaned back. And I respect, but in my courtroom, it was a distraction. It was an attempt to influence the proceedings. Blackwood's expression hardened slightly. Did Mr. Hayes say anything about the medal? Did he point to it? Did he mention it in his defense? No. But, so he wore it quiet, as he's entitled to do, under federal law. I might add, Title 18, Section 704. The medal is specifically protected. Pierce's eyes narrowed. That statute protects against unauthorized wearing of the medal, not against a judge maintaining courtroom decorum. True, Blackwood conceded, but there's also a question of judgment, of respect. Samuel Hayes earned that medal by holding a position for 4 days. Alone, wounded. In Korea, he saved 7 men. He refused evacuation until every single one of them was safe. He paused. Let it sink in. And today, he sat in your courtroom over an unmowed lawn, because he was at a VA hospital and missed a notice. He didn't argue, didn't cause a scene. He just quietly refused to remove something that represents the worst and best days of his life. Pierce was silent. Your Honor, I'm not here to threaten you. I'm not here to undermine your authority. I'm here to ask you, judge to officer, man to man, to reconsider, release him, drop the contempt charge, let him go home. Pierce stared at his desk. And if I don't, Blackwood's voice didn't rot, but it hardened. Then I'll contact the State Judicial Board, the governor's office, every veterans organization in the state, and the media. Not because I want to embarrass you, but because Samuel Hayes deserves better. He stepped closer to the desk. You have the power to make this right now, before it becomes something bigger, before it becomes a national story. I'm giving you that chance. Pierce looked up, met Blackwood's eyes. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Finally Pierce nodded slowly. I'll release him. The contempt charge will be dropped. The citation will be dismissed. Blackwood nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. That's the right decision. Pierce stood. But General, for the record, I still believe courtroom policy matters. I agree, Blackwood said, and I hope you'll consider revising that policy to recognize federal distinctions, so this doesn't happen again. Pierce didn't respond, but he nodded. Blackwood turned toward the door, stopped. I'd like to meet Mr. Hayes, if that's acceptable. Pierce hesitated, then nodded. Of course. General Blackwood walked down to the basement. Holding area. Bailiff Rodriguez looked up, saw the 3 stars, straightened immediately. Sir, I'm here to see Samuel Hayes. Rodriguez hesitated, looked at the paperwork on his desk. Sir, he's being released. Judge's orders just came through. I'm processing it now. Good. May I speak with him before he leaves? Of course, sir. Rodriguez led Blackwood to the holding cell. Samuel Hayes sat in a wheelchair, hands folded, the medal still around his neck. Blackwood stopped at the cell door. For a moment, he just looked at the old man. Then he came to attention, brought his hand up in a slow, precise salute. Sergeant Major Hayes, Major General Richard Blackwood, United States Army. It's an honor, sir. Samuel looked up, his weathered face calm. He gave a small nod. Blackwood lowered his salute. Sir, the contempt charge has been dropped. You're being released immediately. I want to personally apologize for what happened here today. You were treated with disrespect. That was wrong. Samuel's voice was quiet, raspy. You didn't do anything wrong, General. No, sir, but one of our own was disrespected. That reflects on all of us. Samuel shook his head slightly. The judge didn't know. Most people don't. It was a misunderstanding. Perhaps, Blackwood said. But even misunderstandings have consequences. You deserve better. Rodriguez unlocked the cell door, wheeled Samuel out. Rachel Chen appeared at the top of the stairs, relief flooding her face. Mr. Hayes, thank God. I've been making calls. We were going to file an emergency appeal. It's all right, Miss Chen, Samuel said gently. It's over. Blackwood extended his hand. Samuel shook it, his grip still firm despite his age. Sergeant Major, if you'll permit me, I'd like to escort you out of here. Make sure you get home safely. Samuel smiled. Small. Genuine. That's kind of you, General, but I'll be fine. Blackwood nodded. Then at least let me walk with you. They moved through the courthouse, Blackwood beside the wheelchair, Rachel and the other officers following. As they passed through the lobby, people stopped, stared, not at the old man in the wheelchair, at the 3-star general walking beside him, as an equal, as a brother. When they reached the front entrance, Michael Torres was waiting. Blackwood saw him, recognized him from Colonel Williams's description. You're Torres, Carlos's grandson. Yes, sir. Your grandfather would be proud. Thank you for making that call. Michael nodded. Just did what was right, sir. Blackwood smiled. That's all any of us can do. They stepped outside, into the afternoon sun. Samuel Hayes took a deep breath. Free air. General, he said quietly. Thank you, for coming, for caring. Blackwood looked down at him. Sir, it's the least we could do. You've given everything. The least we can do is stand with you. Samuel nodded. I appreciate it. I really do. A van pulled up. Rachel Chen had arranged accessible transport. As Samuel was helped into the van, Blackwood came to attention one more time, rendered another salute, held it until the van pulled away. Then he lowered his hand and watched the old veteran disappear into the city. The next morning, the story broke. Not because the military leaked it, because someone in the courthouse had recorded part of the confrontation on their phone. By noon, it was on social media. By evening, it was on the news. Judge orders Medal of Honor recipient to remove medal veteran held in contempt. The backlash was immediate and overwhelming. The courthouse was flooded with calls, emails, angry messages. Veterans organizations issued statements. Politicians weighed in. The governor's office released a carefully worded response expressing concern and promising a thorough review. Judge Harrison Pierce was placed on paid administrative leave, pending investigation by the State Judicial Conduct Board. His career wasn't over. Not yet, but it was in serious jeopardy. The municipal court administrator issued a formal apology to Samuel Hayes. The city's legal department quietly dismissed the lawn citation and issued a directive that all code enforcement violations would be reviewed for circumstances beyond the resident's control. A local landscaping company, owned by a Marine veteran, offered to maintain Samuel's property free of charge, indefinitely. Samuel declined. Polite, but the company sent a crew anyway. Mowed the lawn, trimmed the hedges, left a note. Semper Fi. No charge. Rachel Chen called Samuel the day after his release. Mr. Hayes, I just wanted to check in, make sure you're okay, and to apologize. I should have fought harder in that courtroom. Samuel's voice was gentle. Miss Chen, you did everything you could. Don't blame yourself. But you stood up for me. That matters. Thank you. Rachel was quiet for a moment. The Bar Association is implementing new training for judges and court staff about military service, veterans issues. They're calling it cultural competency training. That's good, Samuel said. Maybe something positive comes from this. Mr. Hayes, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you just take it off? The medal. It would have been so much easier. Samuel was silent for a long moment. Because it's not mine, he said finally. It belongs to the men who didn't come home. The men I couldn't save. Taking it off, it would have felt like abandoning them all over again. Rachel's throat tightened. I understand. Do you? Samuel's voice was kind. Not challenging. Just curious. I think so. It's not about pride. It's about memory. About honoring a promise. Yes, Samuel said quietly. Exactly. They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Rachel sat at her desk afterward, thinking. She'd handled dozens of cases, parking tickets, noise complaints, zoning violations. But this one would stay with her forever, because it had taught her something law school never did, that the law isn't just about rules. It's about people, about dignity, about recognizing that everyone who walks into a courtroom has a story, and sometimes, those stories deserve more than just procedure. They deserve respect. 3 weeks later, Judge Harrison Pierce sat in his home office. The investigation was ongoing, the outcome uncertain. His attorney had advised him to stay quiet, let the process play out. But Pierce couldn't stop thinking about that day, about the old man in the wheelchair, the medal, the general's words. He'd been a judge for 17 years, prided himself on fairness, on running an orderly courtroom, but somewhere along the way, he'd confused order with authority, procedure with wisdom. He'd looked at Samuel Hayes and seen a problem to be managed, not a person to be respected. That was his failure. He pulled out a piece of paper, wrote a letter, not for his attorney, not for the judicial board, for Samuel Hayes. He rewrote it 3 times, trying to find the right words. Finally, he settled on something simple, honest. Dear Mr. Hayes, I am writing to apologize for my conduct in my courtroom. There is no excuse for how I treated you. I was wrong, not just legally, but morally. You came to my court as a citizen seeking justice. You deserved respect. Instead, I treated you with contempt. For that, I am deeply sorry. I have spent the past 3 weeks reflecting on my actions. on what led me to make such a profound error in judgment. I wish I could say it was a one-time mistake, but I fear it reflects a deeper problem in how I've approached my role. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I am learning from this, and I hope to be a better judge and a better person. Because of it. With sincere apologies, Harrison Pierce. He sealed the letter, mailed it the next day. A week later, his phone rang. Mr. Pierce, this is Samuel Hayes. Pierce's chest tightened. Mr. Hayes, I thank you for calling. Did you receive my letter? I did. That's why I'm calling. I meant every word. I know, Samuel said. I could tell. There was a pause. Mr. Pierce, I don't know what's going to happen with your career. That's not up to me. But I want you to know something. Yes, I forgive you. Pierce's throat closed. You don't have to. I know, but I'm choosing to. Because holding on to anger doesn't help anyone. And because I think you learned something from this. I did, Pierce said quietly. I really did. Good. Then something positive came from it. That's all we can add. They talked for a few more minutes. About the case. About the aftermath. About moving forward. When they hung up, Pierce sat in silence. He didn't know if he'd keep his job, if his reputation would recover. But for the first time in weeks he felt something other than shame. He felt hope that maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't define him. That he could learn, grow, become better. All because an old man in a wheelchair had shown him what real dignity looked like. 6 months after the incident, the judicial board issued its ruling. Judge Harrison Pierce was censured, not removed from the bench, but publicly reprimanded. He was required to complete additional training on veterans' issues, cultural sensitivity, and judicial temperament. He accepted the ruling without complaint. More importantly, he changed. He listened more in his courtroom, asked more questions, showed more patience, and he never forgot the lessons Samuel Hayes had taught him. Meanwhile, the story had taken on a life of its own. Samuel Hayes became a symbol, not just of military valor, but of quiet dignity in the face of injustice. Schools invited him to speak. Veterans organizations honored him. A local documentary filmmaker asked to tell his story. Samuel declined most invitations. He didn't want attention, didn't want to be held up as a hero. I'm just a man, he told people. I did what I had to do. A long time ago. That's all. But he did accept one invitation. To speak at the state judicial conference. To judges from across the state. He sat on stage in his wheelchair, the medal around his neck, and spoke for 20 minutes. About respect. About dignity. About seeing people as human beings, not just case numbers. I don't blame Judge Pierce, he said. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. He paused, looked out at the audience of judges. You have a lot of power, more than you probably realize. You decide people's fates and sometimes in the rush of a busy docket. It's easy to forget that every person who walks into your courtroom is somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's child. They have stories. They have dignity. They deserve to be treated as human beings, not just problems to be solved. That's all I'm asking. Not special treatment. Just basic respect. The room was silent. Then one by one the judges stood, applauding. Not polite applause. Real applause. From people who had heard something true. Samuel Hayes sat in his wheelchair, humbled, grateful. Afterward, several judges approached him, thanked him, promised to do better. One older judge, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, shook his hand. Thank you, she said. I needed to hear that. We all did. Samuel nodded. Thank you for listening. As he was wheeled out of the conference center, Michael Torres was waiting. Mr. Hayes, that was incredible. Samuel smiled. Just told the truth. That's all. It was more than that. You changed minds in there. Samuel shrugged. Maybe I just reminded them of something they already knew. They walked and rolled to the parking lot together. Samuel said, thank you for making that phone call, for caring. It was the right thing to do. Yes, it was. And that matters. More than you know. Michael watched as Samuel was helped into his van and realized he'd just witnessed something rare. A man who had every reason to be bitter, to be angry, to demand recognition, but who chose grace instead. That was the real lesson. 1 year after the courtroom incident, Samuel Hayes sat in his small living room. A reporter from a national news magazine had come to interview him for a feature on Medal of Honor recipients. Mr. Hayes, the reporter asked, what do you want people to take away from what happened in that courtroom? Samuel was quiet for a moment, thinking, I want them to understand that respect isn't about what you wear, or how old you are, or whether you can walk. It's about how you treat people. That judge looked at me and saw an old man in a wheelchair, someone to be managed, someone in the way. He didn't see me. He didn't see my story. He didn't see my humanity. Samuel touched the medal gently. This medal doesn't make me special. It represents a debt I can never repay. To the men who didn't come home, to the men I couldn't save. I wear it for them, to remember, to honor their sacrifice. So when someone dismisses it, they're not just dismissing me. They're dismissing all of them, all the sacrifice, all the loss. He looked directly at the camera. My message is simple. Look at people. Really look at them. Everyone has a story. Everyone has value. The person in the wheelchair, the person bagging your groceries, the person cleaning the floors. They're all human beings. They all deserve dignity. Treat them with respect, not because of what they've done or what they wear, but because they're people. That's all any of us deserve, and that's all any of us should give. The reporter nodded. And Judge Pierce, have you spoken to him since? Yes. We've talked a few times. He's a good man who made a mistake. He's learning from it. That's all we can ask. Do you forgive him? Samuel smiled. Small. Genuine. I do. Holding on to anger doesn't help anyone. He apologized. He changed. That's enough. The interview wrapped up. The crew packed their equipment. Samuel sat alone in his living room afterward, thinking about that day in the courtroom, about Judge Pierce, about General Blackwood, about all the people whose lives had intersected with his. He thought about Korea, about the cold, about the fear, about the 7 men he'd saved, and the ones he had. He thought about the young sergeant he'd been, scared, wounded, but refusing to leave, and the old man he'd become, still fighting, in a different way, for different reasons, but still fighting, because that's what you do. You stand up. You refuse to quit. You do what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you. Especially then. Samuel Hayes looked at the medal around his neck and made a silent promise to the men who didn't come home. I'm still here, still standing, still fighting, for all of us. And he meant